everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of the Dollar Bin Bandits podcast. I'm Joe Marcello, joined as always by my partners in comic book crime, Orrin Phillips.
Hey, everybody.
And Mike Farah.
Howdy, howdy.
Well, like I said, this is a very special episode for us for a few reasons. First, we have our first returning guest. Mr. Ron Marz is joining us. Thank you so much for being here, Ron.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody, for having me again. I guess I didn't screw up too bad the first time, so they pulled me back in.
And secondly, this is the first time we have a full creative team on the show. We have also Mr. Ron Lim joining us for the first time. Thank you both.
Thanks for having me.
Finally, we're not going to be talking just about past exploits. We're going to be discussing about new adventures, specifically one hitting the comic book stands today, specifically called Surfer Rebirth. So, like I said, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to start off the same way we always do. Ron Lim, I'm going to ask you, how did you first discover and get into comic books?
Okay, initially, when I was a tiny kid, I used to read all like the Archie comic kind of thing. Then one day my parents brought home a Marvel comic. It was a Fantastic Four comic. And it was the first time I seen comics actually had drawings of people that looked kind of more realistic. And I was like, hold it, what's this? And after I started reading that, I asked for more. And that's pretty much got me hooked on that. And so Fantastic Four is kind of my gateway into the superhero comics kind of thing. So that was and that was my favorite book growing up. So I still love the Fantastic Four. And then in terms of work, I started doing samples and then going to conventions and showing it and sending it to Marvel and DC, getting the usual rejection letters back from them. So I keep trying. And finally at a WonderCon, the very first WonderCon in San Francisco, they had Tom DeFalco was there with Mark Grunwald, and they were doing portfolio reviews. And so I brought my portfolio, showed it to them, and they liked it enough to say, we'll give you a tryout, like a sample story. If you do well on it, we'll give you more work. And so I was like, finally. And so that was my first job, was a Black Panther story for Marvel. That was not printed for I think 5 or 6 years after I did it.
Now I'm wondering, because I'm a big fan. So you will from X Mutants, you do some work for Badger, and
right.
Then you do work with Marvel.
Yeah.
Where did you think you really started to hit your stride or found your confidence as an artist, saying that I can do this?
Probably with Surfer, because I'd done what, I don't remember how many issues of Cyforce I did, but I did a bunch of Cyforce. And by that time, I already done like the other books. but Surfer was my first monthly that I was on for longer than a few issues. So after a while, I felt like that. And plus, I had like Steve Englehart writing it, and then Joe Rubinstein was inking me. So I couldn't really go wrong because he'd fix whatever I'd goof up on. So so I felt confident with them working on it. But I was actually shocked I got the job, because I was coming off Cyforce, and my editor Craig Anderson was like, "Oh, Marshall Rogers is leaving the book. We need a new Surfer artist, so we're looking for a new artist. I said, can I try?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can try if you want, but whatever." And so I said, "Okay, cool." So I did sample pages, and I thinking nothing of it, of course, like I'm not gonna get it. But then he calls back I don't know many weeks later and says, "We're giving you the book." I'm like, oh, what? I wasn't quite ready for that. So yeah, that's how it started.
So I'm going to jump in for a question for Ron M. Last time you told us the story of how Jim Starlin eased your way into Silver Surfer and the comics industry as your first comics gig. You were first on the annual, then co-writing the regular series. But coming into work with Ron Lim, who had previously been on the book on Silver Surfer for a while, probably a couple of years at that point. How long did it take you guys to sort of gel as a team, coming from, Jim Starlin, Ron Lim era to Ron Marz, Ron Lim era?
I think pretty immediately. I mean, maybe Ron's got a different story. He hated the first year of scripts, but it just felt very natural and comfortable. One, because I had been shown the ropes by Starlin and, had co-written some stuff. So, I had already had the experience of, this is what your script looks like, and this is what it turns into, with Ron. Like the first stuff I wrote, Ron drew. The first stuff I wrote solo, Ron drew. So, so I had a hell of a safety net, because anything that I botched in the script was fine by the time it got to the page. So, and I've said this before, that I had a great education from Starlin, but also a great learning process working with Ron, because he's really good at this. I don't know if you guys noticed, but he's really good at this stuff. So in terms of the storytelling and what fits on a page and what fits on a panel and like all of that stuff, I had two great teachers / co-conspirators to show me the ropes and for me to make those connections of if I ask for this in the script, this is what it comes out like, this is what it turns into. So I think pretty much from the first issue that we did together as a regular team, everything just felt like it fit. And I don't know that we discussed it at all. Even it was just like, oh, okay, we're going to do this. And and in fact, like the first issue that Ron and I did together as a regular team was issue 51, and Marvel reprinted that a year or two ago as like part of the Marvel's Greatest Creators, dollar book line, and I'm like, holy shit. Like,
that was cool.
I was a greatest creator as soon as I started. How about that?
Right off the blocks. Ron, do you remember Ron L? Do you remember it similarly?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was seamless. I mean, since Ron worked with Jim so much, I mean, they wrote similar style. So for me, I was just super. And Ron's writing was perfect from the start. I mean, it flowed really well. I was able to just keep going. I mean, it almost felt like we just had been working on it for a while already. Yeah. So there was no any kind of like transition period, at least to me.
Cool. Very cool. So playing off of what Ron M said, apparently you're pretty good. No, I'm joking. You are pretty damn good. And the reason why I brought that up is, artistically, who are some of your inspirations? Either within comics or not, because you do have a great style that I think lends itself well to these cosmic grand storylines. And I mean, it doesn't have to be that, but it just they gel so well. It really
science
does.
Science fiction is my favorite genre, so I mean,
okay,
that's why I like the Fantastic Four. I mean, that was the thing I read the most. So, but in terms of artists, it was like Jim Starlin, obviously. I love the cosmic stuff, of course. George Perez, because I love George's stuff. Well, everyone loved George's stuff. And John Byrne was the other big major comic influence. I love like the first thing that really blew me away was the Star-Lord, the thing that he did for the black and white thing. Love that thing. So I read that thing over and over. So those three are probably my major. I also have a big influence with Japanese manga, because back then, before they brought it over here, I was buying like the untranslated mangas. I didn't know what the heck was going on in the books, but the art was really fascinating, and I just loved the storytelling, because it was like the storytelling was so much shorter, like between panels, than American comics. Now we have gaps, right? I mean, because we have to jump time, and they have like more cinematic in terms of like just like the speed of the telling of the story within the panels. I love that kind of stuff, so that was fun. So I just kind of incorporated some of that into what I do.
I have a question for both of you, and it's about the sort of the creative process. One thing we've learned doing the show is we always thought that the writer and the artist sort of sat desk to desk, talked to each other all the time, and put through ideas back and forth. And it seems like from a lot of the folks we talk to, sometimes the writer doesn't speak to the artist at all, and it just whatever comes out comes out. Right. What was your guys' creative process for the original run and then for this book as well?
I mean, obviously, when we were doing this in the first place, it's 30 years ago. So
wait, what?
So we sent each other telegrams.
Telegrams.
This was pre-email, right?
Oh yeah.
So we're working pre-email. Like when I would send scripts into the office, I would write them and print them and send the printed copy into the office via FedEx, or in a few short years, we had the stunning technology of a fax machine. Where we could I could print out my script and fax it into the office, and then the editor would read it and then turn around and fax that copy to Ron, or stick that fax copy in an envelope, and we were basically working on stone tablets at that point. But in a weird way, the lack of instantaneous communication that we have now with Zoom and Skype and email and texting and direct message. Like if I want to talk to somebody on the other side of the world, I can do it at any point that I want, right? But in a weird way, I think we talked more as creators 30 years ago than we do now, because guys would pick up the phone and talk to each other. Or you would be on the phone for 2 hours shooting the shit and talking about the story. Whereas now, it's a little more segmented. It's there because there's such instantaneous communication of a text message, say, and you get that conversation done in 3 or 4 texts. People aren't talking to each other as much. So I think we talked fairly often.
We did. Yeah.
And a lot of that is sort of where I came from in terms of understanding how to work with artists, which is, what do you want to draw? What do you not want to draw? How do you think this is? You bounced ideas off of each other, I think, more than you do now. And I still try to do that as much as possible. I still try to say, well, what do you think? Or here's the idea that I have for this page. Do you want to do something different? I try to be as communicative and collaborative as possible, but I know that's not really the norm anymore. It's a lot more, it seems to be a lot more assembly line. And I think one of the reasons is that editors have even more on their plate now than they did 30 years ago in terms of how many books they're handling and all the balls that they're trying to juggle at the same time. There isn't time for kind of shooting the shit from that end of the process. And the pace has quickened so much that a lot of times you're not, depends on the situation, but a lot of times you're not sure who is drawing the issue when you're writing it. And I try to avoid that situation as much as possible and kind of dig my heels in and say, well, how about I not write this until you tell me who's drawing it? And sometimes editors don't like that, because they want to keep the process moving. But I write a script differently for Ron than I do for Rick Leonardi or Darryl Banks or Bart Sears or whoever I'm working with, because I try to play to the strengths of the artist that's going to draw the thing. So working with Ron again on Surfer Rebirth, I hope I sat down and wrote Ron Lim scripts. I wrote stuff that I knew was going to be in his wheelhouse and that he could really show off on.
Yeah, that's totally true. No, I mean, you asked me initially what I wanted to draw, remember? And then so I sent you some.
That's kind of how it's supposed to go. Yeah. Hey, what do you want to draw? That
doesn't happen very often though for me.
Well, it's the business has evolved. But certainly one of the great pleasures is, hey, what do you want to draw? And we talk about it, and then I put it in the script, and then 2 weeks later, you send in a batch of pages, and I'm like, oh, that's the coolest thing ever. I just polished the dialogue on issue 2 of Rebirth, and it was just such a pleasure to go back into the issue and just kind of having looked at the art when it came in initially a few months ago, and now going back in to do some script polishing, just to enjoy what's in front of me. And to,
well, I can't wait till the actual book comes out, because I won't see it until it comes out now.
Yeah, so I haven't seen it. My buddy that owns a comic shop around here sent me a photo. He's got his books already, and I'm like, dude, you own a shop, and you ordered those, and you have them. I made it, and I didn't get a damn thing. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. What's wrong? What's wrong?
Something backwards there.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, that's gonna make a phone call with someone.
So Ron, you actually only see your art at the point that you send in the art, and then you see it as a finished product, or you see it anywhere in between there?
No, I do see, like, they'll send me inks, so I'll see it in black and white, and then they'll send me like some of the colors occasionally, not always, because a lot of these projects are kind of tight on the schedule, so they can't.
Yeah.
They don't remember to send me the stuff right away. So I mean, I don't really bother them, but yeah, I mean, if they can, they usually send me like color scans of the pages and stuff. But I never see the lettering or any of that kind of stuff. I won't see the dialogue until the book comes out. Because they'll send me the inks, the colors, and then that's it. Yeah. But that's okay because I can actually read it.
Must be. Yeah, I was gonna say it's a little bit of a sort of surprise or mystery that you get to find out when the book comes out.
Well, yeah, it's half the fun.
Cool.
I can read it like like everybody else.
Except being like, wow, this is great art. Who did that? So let's get into the new book. Let's get into Rebirth. Basic first question is, how did this all come about? Was it a Marvel reaching out to you guys? Mr. Marz, did you reach out to Marvel and say, I'd like to come back to Silver Surfer and bring Ron L with me? What was the genesis?
I got an email from the editor, Darren Shan, who I knew from when he worked at DC, probably 10 years ago. He had been an assistant on some of the stuff that I worked on there at that point. So I got an email from Darren to say, hey, I got something I want to talk to you about. Can I give you a call? Sure, here's my number. So we called and said, would you be interested in coming back to do a Surfer story with Ron Lim if we can get him to draw it? And I was like, I felt like I should play hard to get, but I was just like, oh yeah, I'll come do that. Yeah, I'm in. So I don't know whether they had talked to you first or talked to me first, but it was the kind of, but it was the kind of thing where it was like, if that guy shows up, will you go on a date with him? And then they said they said the same thing to you. So
yeah, they did. Yeah, Darren emailed me, said the same thing. I was like, I'm in, man. Yeah.
And as far as what it was, basically at that point in the conversation, there was only, it should be a story that could fit into your run somewhere,
right?
And it can be very specifically like between these two issues, or it can just be sort of amorphous somewhere in there and the story fits. And I went with the, it's in there somewhere kind of thing, because I'm not a big fan of stories that take place between panel 3 and 4 of page 17 of issue 282. To me, those aren't terribly interesting stories. So this was just kind of making stuff up and getting a sense of some characters that Marvel wanted to appear,
right?
Not in any overall editorial sense, but just in like talking to Darren, it was like, well, it'd be kind of cool if this person showed up. Right. So I had sort of a list of characters I wanted to get in, and other than that, there was no real direction. It was just like, make up whatever you want, which is the coolest offer you can get.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, being able to revisit these characters after so many years was pretty cool too. I mean, I haven't drawn them in like 30 years. It's like pretty wild. I'd look at reference on my own reference to reference these characters.
So you actually, I was going to jump in. You actually answered the question I was going to ask next about why you chose this period for telling this story versus another era or what have you. But does it in any way have any bearing or affect the characters nowadays? And like specifically, I'm talking about, let's say, Thanos or the reality gem and things of that nature, because the Infinity Stones, gems, whatever they're called nowadays, they've had like their own, they've changed a bit over the years. Like they've been people, like they've been characters, their like sizes have changed, all this kind of stuff. They've gone through these metamorphoses. And does your story have any effect on future storylines, or it just kind of exists within its own microcosm?
We just make this shit up, right, Joe?
This doesn't actually happen.
Yeah, I always thought these were documentaries.
Can we cut here? Can we? This has got to be an edit point because I don't. Look, shit could just get real here. I mean,
in the real sense, I'm not, as a reader or a writer, I'm not a fan of stories that depend on other stories.
Okay.
Like, oh, you've got to, here's this thing that we referenced, like continuity is fine. Like, this happened in issue 57, right? Editor's note. That's cool. But I don't like stories that depend on your knowledge of other stories to have them make sense or mean anything to you.
Fair enough.
So I think I approached this as pretty blank slate, and I wanted, like, if you had read our Surfer run back then, you should be able to plug right in, and everything makes sense, and it's cozy like a warm blanket with hot chocolate. If you had never read any of that stuff, I wanted to also make sense, which is the job, which is the craft of what we do. Mm-hmm. If you've never read a Surfer issue by me or Ron or anybody else, you should be able to pick up issue 1 of this and go, I get this. Like, I don't need to know what happened in issue 75 of Silver Surfer to understand any of this. It's pretty, like, a general working knowledge of the Marvel Universe, i.e., have you seen a few movies, would be good. Like, it's cool if you know who the Kree and the Skrulls are. Other than that, you don't need to bring anything with you, which I think is and hopefully by the end of it, you'll feel like, oh, that was a full meal. I got appetizer, entree, and dessert, and maybe even a cheese plate. And a cup of coffee afterwards. Everybody's happy.
Well, I'm finished.
Cheese plate.
No amuse-bouche.
It's not that kind of restaurant.
Well, looking at Rebirth, for both of you guys, because you worked with the character for so long, do you think there are aspects of the Surfer's, either his backstory, his personality, his mentality, going into things that have yet to be explored in the comics?
I mean, there's always room, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's always room to, Starlin came onto the book and basically added something new, which is, yeah, Surfer's guilty as hell for what he did serving Galactus, and he's repressed all that, and now it's got to come out. Mm-hmm. You can add that kind of stuff, but I think the core of the characters is kind of what it is, to a great extent. I think, like, one of the things that the Marvel movies do so well is get the core of the characters right virtually all the time. The details don't matter. It doesn't, even, whatever version of Spider-Man is out there, whether it's organic web shooters or ones he made in science class, like, the core of the character is right. All that other stuff is details. So I think in this case in particular, but also in general with anything I write, is I want to try to get the core of the character right. What makes this character work, and what are the things that aren't going to change? What are the things that are firmly established? So going back into those storylines for this, we deal with some of the Surfer's guilt, and we deal with some of Thanos being kind of a dick.
Spoilers, man.
Because he is.
He is.
So
revisionist history. That's what I think.
Yeah. And it was cool to have Legacy, Captain Marvel's son, in the story. That was actually cool. A request from Marvel. Can we get him in there?
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Because there were fans of the character up in the offices. So
that's cool.
So that's why he's like, we actually see him before we see the Surfer in the first issue.
Oh, interesting. I wanted to circle back on you guys basically answered the question, which was going to be, Ron M, did you reach out to Ron L to say, what characters you want to draw, or what do you want to draw? Which it seemed like he did. Yeah. I wonder if we could go a little deeper and ask, if it's not giving away too much, one, what his answer was, but also I kind of wanted to know where in the process you do that. So you get, the parameters from Marvel, and they want, certain things or would like to see certain things. We know Silver Surfer is obviously going to be it. At what point are you getting a kernel of story together before you reach out to Ron L, or are you your next call is, hey, what do you want to draw? And then you take all of these sort of like things that are out there and then put it together into the story.
And I think what happened is I talked with Marvel, and then I threw Ron an email and said, hey, are we doing this? Yeah. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, all right, let me try to pull some of this together.
Yeah.
And here's kind of some of the characters they threw at me. And I want to put Thanos in it because I'm not stupid. Both from a standpoint that, he's like known the world. I know I've told this story before, but I did a convention in Nairobi, Kenya.
Wow.
A couple years ago, back in the before times. And, so I'm literally on the other side of the world. I'm in East Africa, and there's a dude walking around in a Thanos t-shirt at the con. And I'm like, this is weird. The world has caught up with, where we were 30 years ago. So all that stuff kind of mixed into the stew. And then I think I wrote up a very basic outline. Like here's the basic outline for the story, and sent it to Marvel and sent it to Ron, and everybody kind of, gave their 2 cents. And then I broke it up into a 5-issue outline of here's, outlines are basically, here's enough stuff to satisfy you that I know where I'm going, but I really don't. I'm going to make it up as I go. That's what the real purpose of an outline is. But it does give you, in all seriousness, it gives you a framework to rely on when you get halfway into issue 3 or whatever and go, I don't know where I'm going now, which inevitably happens because you're just making up stuff.
Easy enough.
I'm still in shock over the fact that you only make this up. I mean, you mean all this Green Lantern crap I've been collecting all these years doesn't actually happen? I mean, well,
but it's weird though, because I get like questions on social media and stuff or at signings, and like, well, when this happened, and why did Wolverine beat Lobo, and the answer is the same all the time. We just made it up. That's why. Like, I thought it would be cool. That's why that happened.
You need to talk to the Star Wars people and tell those fans that, because they're all butthurt over the fact that people wear, they're riding green motorcycles and stuff. So
this is the honest to God's truth, because I know this is what you want to talk about, is I still get questions about the Darth Vader versus Darth Maul issue of Star Wars Tales that I wrote probably 20 years ago. Right, Darth Vader meets Darth Maul, and they fight. They fight for like 50 pages, and at least once a month I still get a question sent to me on Twitter from someone I've never heard from before. Well, when this happened, was Darth Vader using the full extent of the Force, and does that mean that he has more Force than Darth Maul did at that time? Yeah. I thought it would be cool if Darth Vader won, so that's what happened.
You don't have the original spreadsheets of their power dynamics.
I mean,
how they compare to each other. Joe, by the way, there are actually lanterns that are green. If you go to a good antique shop, you can find them. They exist.
I got a couple. I mean, I got a green one and a yellow.
Oh.
So they do exist.
Yeah, they do.
Yellow lantern.
Coming back quickly, so can you divulge anything, Ron L, that
the major one
you put on the menu for the new?
Well, the major one I requested cannot be told, so he's kind of a surprise. So she don't know,
right? He,
knows.
She, it. Yes. Okay.
Should we bleep that? I'll bleep that. That'll be cool.
I'm just going to assume it's Rocket Racer until told otherwise.
Rocket Racer.
Yeah, honestly, there's some characters that show up in this that have not leaked out yet, which I'm kind of surprised about. Although like in the first issue, I thought, oh, we're gonna put the original Captain Marvel in here, and that's gonna be cool. That's gonna surprise people. And then I get the first cover from him, and it's like, oh, I guess we're telling people that Captain Marvel's in this issue.
It didn't exactly blur him out, did they?
He was faded in the background.
I can just make out in the stars.
Yeah, he's a mirage.
So, Ron L, I want to ask, and not necessarily limited to this series that you guys are working on, but who are some of your favorite characters to draw?
To draw this, well, I like the Thing from the Fantastic Four. I love him. Surfer, I love it. I've drawn enough of him, so I think I got him out of my system. Who do I like? Spider-Man, I love to draw. He's always fun. At DC, I always love Batman, and he's like one that I'll draw there. And gosh, yeah, I mean, I like quite a number of characters. Those are probably my main ones. Yeah.
Is there
I like Venom too. Venom's fun too.
No, okay. Is there one or two, whatever, that you've never really had a chance to just sink your artistic teeth into, that you've wanted the chance to do so?
The only one that really is Batman. I mean, when I did the few years I worked for DC, I did Superman. I drew some Flash. I worked with Green Lantern, and then but no Batman. I've drawn him in the background in a couple panels on a couple pages, but nothing with like a story with him as a main character. Yeah. So that's the one character I'd like to draw.
He's your white whale, if you will.
Yeah. Yep.
Black whale, dark night, whatever.
Dark whale.
There you go.
I have a very extremely nerdy follow up to that, but
well, hold on, hold your horses here. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll prepare myself.
As I say. But for you artistically, when you're drawing a cosmic character as opposed to an earthbound character, do you change your style at all, or your thought process going into it, or is it just it all kind of rolls?
Yeah, mainly it's the surrounding stuff, right? So I mean, the characters like pretty much draw the same, but like obviously if I'm doing Spider-Man, then it's all buildings in New York, all that kind of stuff. Right. So yeah, I mean, it's more fun drawing the space stuff because I can just make it up, and it's real, it's all fantastic and out of this world kind of stuff. Whereas I love drawing the realistic stuff too, but it's definitely obviously not as exciting as like a space temple or something like that. So yeah,
you can just write BWS and there's a background.
Yeah, yeah. That's like that. I joined a naked guy on a surfboard with no background in space.
That's funny.
The other question I had is for both you guys, for Surfer being such a powerful character, who could do so much in the universe, do you think he's utilized to his fullest potential in the books or throughout his history?
I tend to think, yeah, because he's you can do a lot with him. And obviously it took me a while to figure this out. Like, well, when I wrote 50 some issues of the main title, it took me a while to figure out, okay, this is how he works. But I think he can be a lead character, and that's great. He works as that. He can also be a supporting character who is very much the alien, capital A alien looking at humanity. He's the reflective surface for humanity, no pun intended. So I think he serves any number of roles. I think he works really well as that sort of as that extra, he's the alien when the Fantastic Four shows up, right? He's the alien force that looks at humanity in a way that the Fantastic Four don't, because they can't see the forest for the trees, right? So I think I think we've gotten any number of interpretations. Obviously, Stan and Jack first, and then Stan and John Buscema. We've had a lot of different versions of the Surfer because the character is fairly elastic. We might even address that in this very mini series. Possibly, could be, maybe. Possibly. And like I think you can pick sort of what surfer flavor you want. There are, I think the Kirby surfer tends to be more alien and powerful, and as you would expect with Jack, and the Buscema one is more of that, reflection of humanity kind of thing. And then the Mobius graphic novel, the Mobius two-parter that he did with Stan is just amazing. And then Dan Slott's run was awesome, and he was basically Doctor Who. I think he's one of those characters that you can do a lot of different things with. Some characters are a little bit more narrow, but he's really open to a lot of different interpretations.
I have a question. I want to jump in here, guys. Sorry. So as it pertains to the title, Rebirth, there've been a lot of, or at least within the past few years, you've had some questions that were some characters that had rebirth in their title. Green Lantern, obviously, being one of them. Flash. Trying to think of another. But in doing so, there is usually some type of like a change, if you will. Maybe the beliefs are different. The character has died and come back. Certainly there is a slight change to the outfit and the design. Is there any of that? Or I guess, Ron Marz, you kind of answered that really a bit with what you just said, but artistically, is there any difference to the character, or maybe like a freshening up or of some sorts?
I tried to play with some of the stuff in there, but it's generally, I still draw, the way I drew him back then. I just tried to sharpen it up a little, but in terms of the characters,
Character is the character.
It's the same surfer.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Honestly, more than anything, I think Rebirth is just a title that has some resonance in the comic market. It's not like we're doing anything, it's not a starting over. It's not a, we're telling a story set within the era in which we worked on the book. And I don't know that there's any sort of rebirth. Actually, there is a rebirth in the last issue, but it doesn't.
It's Sinestro, right? He shows up.
Yes, if Sinestro shows up,
Sinestro.
He's still got that Nazi mustache. So
yeah.
You can always tell Sinestro's a bad guy because he's got a mustache.
Thank God I shaved.
So I wanted to wrap up at least this line of questioning with a question about this sort of format, right? Revisiting these characters, coming back, everything old is new again. What other, if you had to choose, if you had the opportunity, and this is a question for each of you, what character or run would you most like to revisit after this?
Oh, that's a good question.
Together or separately?
Also a question. Also a variable. You can choose one together. You can also choose one separately.
Too many choices.
I know. The paradox of choice.
Boy, that's an interesting question. I mean,
yeah,
I would actually, what would be badass is to do a Batman story with Ron over at DC. Well, I guess actually that's the only place you can do a Batman story.
Right, an image of
legally, right? Distinction, Rono.
But hearing Ron say he'd love to draw Batman, man, that would be all sorts of fun.
That would
and honestly, I was very jealous that Ron got to draw the Superman Silver Surfer.
Oh yeah.
So I'd want to do another Superman Surfer crossover, which is obviously never happening.
Yeah, unfortunately.
because intercompany crossovers are not really a thing that much anymore.
Yet.
But so those are two answers. But my real answer is I would do anything with Ron. Like,
same here.
Whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
you have characters that you really dig and that you spark to. But for me, this whole process, 30 years of doing this, the people that you're working with are as important or more important than the characters you're working on, by far.
Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, if you were to ask anything, I'll hop on it, man. I mean, this, 30 years. I mean, I can't believe it's 30 years since we worked together. It's crazy, right? It doesn't feel like it.
It really doesn't seem like it. I mean, it's honest. It doesn't seem like I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got gray hair, so obviously you have.
That's just the camera, man.
Sometimes the camera takes away hair too. It's very weird. Weird effects.
Get more cameras on you.
Apparently. But it, like, doing this series, I felt like no time had passed. Totally. Like the first script, I had to, sort of surround for a week or so and kind of get my head straight with it. But as soon as Ron's pages started coming in from the first issue, I was like, oh, I know what this is like. Like, I've got this. And sometimes that's the way it works, is you want to see something before it really starts to gel. So I'm really happy with the first issue, but I think both my comfort level with the story and the characters and all that stuff was heightened as the further we got into it. And also just when Thanos shows up in the story, that's a buddy cop movie that I want to see someday, because I just like the dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Buddy cop. Thanos and Surfer.
That's for season 2 of What If.
Ron L, any other characters that were mentioned? I mean, there were a lot that were mentioned, and I would love to see any of those. But
in Surfer,
or no, not necessarily Surfer that you'd sort of want to revisit. I mean, if you have, we threw out Superman, Batman,
yeah,
bunch of others.
I worked on so many characters. I mean, I always loved Spider-Man, so going back to Spider-Man, but I did Spider-Man Unlimited for a while, so that was fun.
Yep.
Remember
that.
What else is there? X-Men 2099 was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. So yeah, maybe that. And
could happen.
Yeah.
It's comics.
I actually pitched for X-Men 2099, but I came in obviously not first place.
Wait, this for a new one?
No. Years ago, when they initially did it, they got a pitch from me for it, and I
back then.
I have frankly no idea what my pitch was, other than
I didn't even know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Obviously the book was canceled, so they should have gone with me. It's not still going now. So, but yeah, for a while, like everybody had their 2099 pitch for whatever it was.
Right.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. I think that was one of the reasons that you really just couldn't keep drawing Surfer anymore, is that you were getting pulled over there. Plus Marvel was giving you, like 80 pages a month to draw from various and sundry titles.
Can't do that anymore.
Yeah, for a couple of years there, it was, let's see if we can kill Ron Lim this month.
So Ron L, I wanted to ask, and then I'm going to be mindful of everyone's time. I think we only have like 1 or 2 questions left, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your time at DC. Obviously not as extensive as your time at Marvel, but what was your takeaway from DC, really, that you?
I loved it. The only reason I stopped working with DC was because I did a contract with Marvel for a while. So I had to, and so, but I loved it. All the people there were great. I mean, I worked with Jim Starlin over there on that Rand Thanagar War. That was a lot of fun. And like I said, I did various issues of Green Lantern and Flash. I mean, I love those DC characters. They're all great characters. So, I mean, having to draw them, the only thing is I never really did a regular run on anything like that. So that'd be nice to do a regular run on a character for a while. Of course, nowadays, there isn't really that many long runs on titles with just a same creative team, I guess. I mean, a lot of it's like 5 issues here, right? I mean, there's some, but not as many as there used to be.
No, it's just one event after another. That's all.
Yeah.
Everything just gets rebooted every 10 minutes. But your artwork really lent itself well to Rand Thanagar War. It really, for, again, one of those cosmic stories that really, it really resonated. And out of those series, I think that were happening at that time due to various, like, was it Infinite Crisis tie-ins and whatnot.
Yeah, right.
Yours was really badass. I loved it.
Oh, thanks. I just love John Hawkman. He was cool.
Well, yeah, that's what I enjoyed about that series, is like, you were diving into like the really more of the backstory and history, if you will, of like, the Hawk people, and not necessarily Hawkman, but the Thanagarians and whatnot. And there was some Green Lantern stuff thrown in there too, which was awesome. So yeah, it was really cool. Sorry, I had to just
oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Glad you liked it.
I definitely, yeah. So
are you guys cool with sticking around just for a couple more extra questions, and may or may not be used?
Yeah,
okay, just want to make sure you have time.
When we stop, I have to go back to work, so
Okay. So
well, let me get a beer. We can hang out.
Yeah, exactly. Ron M, I wanted to ask you, while I was looking back on your run on Silver Surfer the first time, so there were a lot of Infinity happenings going on, right? And a lot of crossovers going on. And Ron L, you were working on basically both,
right.
At least the last part of Gauntlet and then War and Crusade. But in terms of weaving those in and out of the regular Silver Surfer book, I mean, how difficult was that to kind of either interrupt your story? I know it all tied into Silver Surfer, but interrupt the story that Ron M, you wanted to tell by having to constantly sort of stop and be like, oh wait, Infinity something, and then come back out, and then Infinity something, and then come back out.
Well, that's part of the gig. Like, if you don't like that part of it, don't sign up for it. It's like, it's like going to Pizza Hut and going, there's pizza here. What the hell? Not that I'm advising anybody to go to Pizza Hut.
I live in Lower New York. I'm not going to a
3
Pizza
years,
Hut.
man.
And
It used to be special.
with the red cups, right? Like got the red cups.
Yeah, and
Pizza Hut when,
served you.
like in
Never
7th grade.
I have never been into a
They
Pizza
had
Hut.
beer at one point. Remember
Yes,
that.
indeed.
I'm dating myself totally.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I mean, that's part of
Pizza Hut.
part and parcel of the gig. If you don't want to be involved in crossovers, don't write superhero comics. And obviously it's even more prevalent now than it was then. And really it's a matter of, how do you, how well do you do this? Like if you're like, oh, this, this crossover chapter that I had to put into my run ruins everything. Well, I don't know, maybe you're not very good at it then. You work with the cards you're dealt. And certainly the initial Surfer stuff, where I took over the book and then had like 9 issues in a row that were Infinity Gauntlet tie-ins. Because we were double shipping in the summer, and so that was my, here kid, we're going to throw you into the deep end of the pool, and guess what, your first 9 issues are going to have to tie in with this other huge storyline, but you can't do anything that affects that storyline because that one's got to be separate over there, but you have to reflect it, so in retrospect it was a pain in the ass. Like, I couldn't just do what I wanted to do, but it was also the best training ground that I could have had for, this is how you work within a shared universe, and this is how you tell stories within the parameters that you're given. So I don't regret any of that. It was wonderful training for me to both working within a shared universe and also just the job of writing. Like, how do you make these parameters interesting? How do you tell a story that that fits within this box and make people feel like they got their money's worth out of it, but also doesn't stray too far from where you're supposed to go. So and in a practical sense, I'm still getting royalties off of those comics. Like, Infinity Gauntlet's been reprinted ad nauseum forever and ever. So weirdly, like, the first stuff I ever wrote is still is still earning out. So I don't, it's working in a superhero universe is not just, I'm going to come in and do whatever I want. That really is not how this works at all. That's why, whenever I see somebody that, pops off on social media or something like that, and they're pissed off about, well, my vision was compromised, or, well, you don't own it, man. Like,
Right.
Like somebody else is, somebody else has the reins. You might be one of the sled dogs, but you're not the guy yelling mush. And again, that goes with the territory. And if you're not cool with it, just go work on something else. So I dealt with it 3 different times, obviously, within this run of Surfer, because we had 3 different Infinity crossovers. And I think probably some of the issues were more successful than some of the others, but I don't look back at any of them and go, oh my God, it was the worst experience ever. It's, again, it's Silver guy on a surfboard, shooting people with laser bolts. It's
Can you tell?
It's a pretty good gig, no matter what happens.
Can you tell all of that to Alan Moore?
I have not.
Alan knows all that better than anybody.
And he needs to shut the fuck up.
Well, in not to get too far into the weeds, but Alan was told one thing about Watchmen, and then it didn't turn out to be so. So I understand him being salty about it. But also, I don't know that there's a bigger superhero fan of the sort of wondrous, Silver Agey stuff that Alan and some of the other people grew up with. I mean, you read Alan's Supreme stuff, and it's basically, 1960s Superman, just crazy, sort of wonder-filled stuff. So, I'm not one of those revisionists who look at Alan Moore stuff and go, oh, he's a grumpy old man. Well, Alan, look, if anybody has a right on a sheer talent level to be a jerk about stuff, it's Alan. And from everybody that I know that knows him, that's not him.
All right, fair enough. As a fan, though, he's just so angry about everything.
Well, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because anytime he agrees to an interview, somebody comes in and goes, hey, yeah, why are you pissed off about Watchmen?
Oh yeah, no.
Joe, we just need to have him on here.
Yeah.
Oh, please.
And you can
comforting, quieting, nurturing space where we won't bring up Watchmen.
Alan, let's talk, buddy.
All right, I wanted to jump in. This is sort of my last thing. I'm just curious because it occurred to me many times. But so we have these huge crossovers, Infinity War and Endgame. I thought they were pretty good to great. But and I know the rights are hung up, or were hung up at that time in Fox, but no Silver Surfer, which in the in the original stories, he is such an integral role. What did you guys think? Were you just I mean, knowing the realism of not being able to have him, but were you still like, come on?
But are you seeing babies in the movies?
Yeah. Yeah. They have like a hamster on a wheel in the back, and pictures move.
I gotta start paying more attention.
It's an amazing technology.
It's I'm interested to hear Ron's answer, but for me, because you were in the trenches for this, it's you up there on the screen. For me, like, film and comic are 2 different mediums, and they work differently. And one of the huge advantages of film is they've got like 60 years of comics to cherry pick from. So it didn't bother me in the least that Surfer wasn't part of that, because he hadn't been established yet. And like the real world concerns of, oh, the Fantastic Four rights are over there, and we don't, like all that stuff, you just kind of go, okay, that's fine. Now, I assume that at some point we're going to see the Surfer up on the screen because he's too cool not to. And if you do a Fantastic Four movie, I think Galactus has got to be, not too far behind. And if Galactus is there, well, Surfer is going to show up.
Yeah.
So look, we got an Ant-Man movie, right? So I got to figure that Surfer will at least appear, and that'll be cool. I mean, we've already had him in a movie, and it's actually probably the best part of that movie. So, and just in terms of, well, he looked cool, he sounded cool. He was Silver.
He was Silver, and
he was Silver. They, a lot of theaters had that Surfer statue in the lobby.
Yeah.
That I still can't get my hands on.
They didn't make a big poster for the Galactus cloud. I don't understand why that didn't catch on.
Large cloud characters go over really well.
Kids love them.
Yeah.
There's one truism.
Galactus,
movies, it's,
Parallax.
If your villain's not a cloud, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah.
True. In both of your properties, that happened.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Parallax and Galactus.
Yeah, what is up with that? Come on.
I think they hang out and intermingle their dust particles at some point.
Whoa.
I'm sorry. This got a little X-rated there.
This got dirty.
Literally.
Oh man.
Well, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
No. I was going to start to wrap up because we were deviating, going down a really dark path.
Well,
I just wanted to get
Ron's answer.
I wanted to get Ron's answer.
Yeah.
For the whole movie experience.
Because
I actually saw Endgame with Starlin.
No shit.
That we were together at. And it was cool. I mean, it was a cool experience. And I know from talking to Jim that like that whole experience of, there's not just Thanos, but a bunch of characters that I just made up are up there, and known the world over.
That's so cool.
And the there's specific visual stuff that you did that's in those movies. What is that like?
It was awesome. I mean, I never thought Thanos would ever appear on the screen. First of all, I mean, it was the last character I thought they would ever put in the movies. So I was like, what the heck? And so I've seen it. All that stuff is excellent. I mean, of course, it's going to change stuff. I would have loved Surfer to be in there. I mean, that would have been awesome. But yeah, they haven't established him. It'd be way too much work, and it would take years again to establish him, to throw him in there, right? I mean, and then Adam Warlock's not in there. So all these characters, if you introduce one, you got to introduce the other. So I have a feeling that was the best way to go about it, I think. And I mean, and they focused on Thanos, which I thought was really smart because they established him, and I mean, his characterization in the Infinity War was excellent. I really liked that a lot. And the Endgame kind of went off of the whole Infinity stuff. It was more of its own thing, but I still loved it. I thought it was excellent. So I mean, I enjoyed it. And like Ron said, movies and the comics are totally different. There's no way they're going to be exactly the same story. I mean, that would be impossible. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
What about your thoughts on his design? Because it changed.
Yeah,
after the initial Avengers.
Right.
I mean, I was loving that design. I mean, granted, it was just a profile,
right,
which seems spot on, and then in Guardians, even more so.
Right.
And then it just totally. I mean, not that it's totally different, but definitely a significant change, departure from what you're used to.
When they cast what's his name?
Josh Brolin.
Yeah, Josh Brolin.
They Brolinized him.
He Brolin out exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, he looks just like him, which was a little weird, but. And his chin seemed to get bigger, which was really weird.
Yeah.
But I thought he was great. I mean, visually he was totally different than what we did, of course. But they have to change things for these movies. They always do. So it was fine. I liked him better in Infinity War, though. I thought since they focused on him more in there, I liked that version. Because in the end game, he really wasn't in it that much, except at the end, right, where he fought with the three main characters. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, he's all right.
Yeah.
I liked him a lot.
And for a movie called Infinity War, were you missing the evil doppelgangers from the original Infinity War?
Yeah, why did they take that name?
I was like, where's the Magus and or Magus?
Can you imagine though if they did doppelgangers, all those characters?
Yeah, I still think they just got to give it a different title. They'll get to that. They'll get to the
Well, he's introduced Star.
Put mustaches on everybody, just like Sinestro.
Bad versions like in Star
Friends.
Trek.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't watch that.
That's the real secret invasion.
Yeah.
Secret invasion. I like it.
All right.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and bring this to a close. So, Ron Lim, Ron Marz, this has been awesome for us, and I hope everyone
thanks, guys.
watching. This has been extremely. It's been fun to talk to you both. Again, first time for us to speak to a creative team has really been an absolute pleasure. So, thank you both for taking the time out of your day.
Pleasure, guys. You might
thanks
even
for having
talk
us.
me into a third time at some point.
Ooh, a trilogy.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Ron, because
What are you doing tomorrow?
Yeah.
I'll come and shovel your snow if you come. No.
Let's have a commentary on this interview tomorrow.
Yeah. So with that being said, look, everyone, you know what we usually do at the end here. We do give you all our social stuff, but we're going to spare it this time only because I don't remember it offhand. That being said, you know where to follow us. You know where to find us. Rate, review, subscribe. And be sure to check out Surfer Rebirth today, because this is airing on Wednesday on your comic book stands. If you have one in your neighborhood, hopefully you still do. And I'm assuming you can find it on Comixology and all various, digital platforms. So everyone, have a good one. We'll see you soon.